This is a Hot Pie Original.
Yeah, you knew he'd weigh in. You knew he'd go there. You knew he wasn't going to miss the chance. He'll fix it. He'll fix it. D. Trump. It's all everyone else's fault. Afghanistan, taxes, masks, blah, blah. It's everyone else's fault. I'm sure had D. Trump been in charge yesterday or the day before, this whole Afghanistan thing would have gone very smoothly. Of course, he says that it would. Never mind that D. Trump, who, by the way, I agreed with him too when he said, I want to get out of Afghanistan. I don't want endless wars. I agreed and would agree with anybody that says it. But for D. Trump, a guy who's now being busted and outed for making a, quote, peace deal with the Taliban, now, a guy who I don't even know that I completely, again, disagree with the policy of trying to work something out to get them out of the way, trying to make the place better. I don't fault the Trump administration for that, but for him now being the typical narcissistic fool that he is, the complete, I can't think of anything else but a narcissist. Look at me, hear me. He's even trampling. I know it doesn't matter to most non-thinkers, but he's even trampling on the very policies that he wanted to implement, which some of us agreed with. Just to sound cool and just to sound tough. And the infomercial that is Sean Hannity gave him a platform, and he did exactly what you would expect him to do.
Well, it's good to be with you, Sean, but it's a terrible time for our country. I don't think in all of the years our country has ever been so humiliated. I don't know, would you call it a military defeat or a psychological defeat? There's never been anything like what's happened here. It's you can go back to Jimmy Carter with the hostages. We all thought that was a great embarrassment, and we were pulled out of that by Ronald Reagan. This is many, many times worse, and you're dealing with thousands and thousands of Americans and others that are stranded and very dangerously, really stranded in Afghanistan. So it's something that you can't even believe that a thing like this could. I looked at that big monster cargo plane yesterday with people grabbing the side and trying to get flown out of Afghanistan because of their fear, their incredible fear, and they're blowing off the plane from 2,000 feet up in the air. It's nobody's ever seen anything like that. That blows the helicopters in Vietnam away. That's not even a contest. This has been the most humiliating period of time I've ever seen. Yeah, we had a great deal. We worked on it very hard. Mike Pompeo, a brilliant guy, and many others worked on it endlessly. Meetings with the Taliban. Of course, you have to meet with the Taliban. They're the ones that you're negotiating with. I spoke on numerous occasions to the head of the Taliban, and we had a very strong conversation. I told him up front, I said, look, before we start, let me just tell you right now that if anything bad happens to Americans or anybody else, or if you ever come over to our land, we will hit you with a force that no country has ever been hit with before. A force so great that you won't even believe it. And your village, and we know where it is, and I named it, will be the first one.
Mr.
The first
President, I
bombs
want to
will
interrupt.
be dropped right there.
You said this to who?
Yeah.
Who did you said
to
that to who?
To Mullah Baradar, who is probably the top person. Now, nobody really knows who the top person is, but I would say that's probably the top person, and it seems to be that's the way it's rolling right now. But I had a very strong conversation. I also had a good conversation with him. We talked for a while after that. That was the primary point I was making, and he understood it. And I asked him, do you understand? He said, yes, I do understand. And I wanted them to get a deal done with the Afghan government. Now, I never had a lot of confidence, frankly, in Ghani. I said that openly and plainly. I thought he was a total crook. I thought he got away with murder. He spent all his time whining and dining our senators. I mean, the senators were in his pocket. That was one of the problems that we had, but I never liked him. And I guess based on his escape with cash, I don't know, maybe that's a true story. I would suspect it is. All you have to do is look at his lifestyle, study his houses where he lives. He got away with murder in many different ways. But I had a very, very strong talk with the Taliban, which I consider to be much more important in this.
I don't believe any of that. I don't think you should either. But if you are an ass kisser, you probably will. if all of that were true, and notice how the infomercial host doesn't ever once stop and say, why didn't you get out? Why didn't we leave? I mean, you said you had a plan. You said you had an execution. What do you mean a deal? Why didn't we just leave? Then, of course, he went there. I don't disagree that it was nothing but a train wreck the last 24 hours. It is shockingly incompetent. But he says the outcome in Afghanistan, including the withdrawal, would have been totally different if the Trump administration had been in charge. You were in charge, you idiot. You were in charge. You're on the phone with the guy. Why don't you say, we're out, man? We're out. Why didn't you do it? You were in charge. And for never once, the infomercial host, never once interrupting and saying, okay, you threatened them. You said you wanted to make a deal, but if you campaigned on the idea that you wanted to get out, why didn't you get out? What stopped you from pulling out? How do you not ask that question? How do you be such an intellectual midget that you don't even ask the question? Because that's what everyone who thinks is going, wait a minute, man, you were there for a while. You're on the phone with them, whatever. We don't care about that part. What we should care about is you're now sitting here saying it would have been totally different if you were in charge. You were in charge. You said you were going to get out. Why didn't you get out? Why wasn't it you giving the speech that you said Joe Biden screwed up? Why didn't you give that speech? Today we got out, and I'm not dumping this on another president. Why didn't you give that speech? What would be his answer? Why can't the question even be asked? And I don't care if it's Donald Trump or Barack Obama or George W. Bush. How can any thinking, if you have a brain, if you try to think for a change, can't sit there and listen and go, yeah, you're a badass. You're a badass. Got it. Why didn't you get out? There. It would have been totally different if the Trump administration were in charge. You were. You and everybody else before Joe Biden have been in charge. And your answer to that is what, genius? The only thing more despicable than the guy blabbing on as a narcissistic tool is the fact that somebody sitting across from him can't have the intellectual capacity to even ask a legitimate question. Just ask the question. How can anybody sitting with a former president across from them, how can anybody not ask, you said you wanted out. Why didn't you get out? Anybody listening right now who can think would ask that. It's the right question to ask. Instead, you let him you just let him ramble aimlessly. Because everything he does is aimless. And that's why we have a collection of people in this country that are dumb, because they're dumbed down by cheerleading infomercials like that, no matter what the president's name is. No wonder we're stupid. That was 5 minutes of stupidity. And you let him get away with it. That's the problem. If I were in charge, what a phrase for anybody who's in office. You're the commander in chief, man. All right, he goes on to ramble.
And after I said that, we had a pretty good conversation. Now, I have to tell you that if you remember when they were coming to Washington to meet with me, they decided to kill an American soldier because they thought that was a good way to negotiate. And I canceled the trip. And we had a conditions-based agreement. And if you remember, it said May 1st, we want to get out because we have to get out. I've listened to people on your show and other shows say we should stay. They don't know. We were spending $42 billion a year. $42 billion. Think of it. $42 billion. I understand Russia spends $50 billion a year for their entire military. We were spending $42 billion, not 1%. They were saying 1%. That's a lot of nonsense. We're spending $42 billion a year on defending this for years and years. We've been there really now, not 20 years, but 21 and a half years. And we get nothing out of any of these things that we do, whether it's them or many other countries I could tell you about. I'm not going to insult anybody right now. But to spend that kind of money and then to have people get on shows and say how inexpensive it was. And I have to tell you also that we lost no soldiers in the last year and a half because of me and because of the understanding that we had. We lost no, think of that. In Chicago and in New York and in other cities in the United States, many people die every weekend. We lost no soldiers in Afghanistan because they knew I wasn't going to put up with it. And that's what happened. So we had a very strong conversation.
Let me ask you this.
You're
sir.
a liar, and the person across from you is an idiot. You just said we didn't lose anybody. You said May 1st. You said we spent $42 billion. There are some of us who have cared for a long time. Some of us think it's the right call to get out. Some of us would have agreed with you, but you didn't do it. You didn't do anything. You're acting like you're the one who pulled this out of there. You didn't. I'm great. It's great that Donald Trump is mentioning the money we spent. It's great that Donald Trump is mentioning what a nightmare it's been. It's great that he's right about other places where we're nation building or policing. What is not even laughable, what's maddening about all these discussions and the moron sitting across from him is that you are playing dumb. You're willingly playing dumb and not forcing the people that work for the American public to answer questions. Joe's having to answer it. Joe's getting it from every direction, as well he should. But to not even ask the man in front of you babbling on about how great things are. I fixed him. And he said he's the one who wanted to get out May 1st, and he didn't do it. He didn't do it. How does that not come up?
John McClellan is the co-founder and creator of ATX Hot Sauce in all 50 states, now in several retail outlets as well. So we're going to turn it over to the social media rock chef superstar, and we're going to walk through a few sauces and why you should buy. We've done Beat Heat, so we're second in line now for the tasting. Don't forget, everyone, go to atxhotsauce.com. So here we go.
All right, so this one is our smoked habanero 5-pepper. We smoke habaneros with ancho, pasilla.
Is that going to hurt?
This one? No,
Yeah.
This one's actually really, really good.
Okay.
This is like your traditional tapatilla, but without the vinegar in it, right? And because of that fermentation process that we've talked about all the time. This one is great on sandwiches, pizzas, things like that. Great on hot wings. I think you're going to really like this one too, especially the smoky flavor with the adobe chipotle and the smoked habaneros. We actually smoked the habaneros before we.
Does that go with the cab?
This would not go with the cab. This would go with the great Chenin Blanc, though.
I teed you up with that one.
Yeah, yeah.
That is good.
That's good. Isn't that good? It's just classic take. Well, it's a new take on a classic item. It's called smoked habanero 5-pepper.
All right, don't forget
One of my
ATX.
favorites.
Don't forget atxhotsauce.com.
What do you make of Afghanistan? Well, the public has been asked. At least we're talking about it. At least we have feelings again. At least we have thoughts again. They're probably going to be gone in 24 hours, but it's in the news, and I thought it was a good time for news organizations to go back and say, hey, everybody, what do you think about that whole mess? How do you feel about it now? And the answers were fairly predictable. George W. Bush, the architect of what we've done in Afghanistan for 20 years, or at least his face is attached to what we've done in Afghanistan of the past 20 years. If you go back and you document terrible moments in presidencies, those single moments where it just was a terrible idea and it completely backfired. That day on that Navy ship of when he goes all Top Gun and he goes out there and they had that banner. I don't even know how many weeks or months we're into invading Iraq and Afghanistan and all that stuff. And I'm saying I don't agree with this. And people are saying you need to be fired. You hate America, all that stuff. Remember those times early on? And he had that big banner that said mission accomplished. Oh my gosh. And it went downhill from there until, well, it's still going downhill, right? So the public was asked, George W. Bush issued a statement. I think he's right about this. I think the guy he's not Trump. He has a heart. He's a decent person. People genuinely like him. But it was a catastrophic screw up. Catastrophic. Some of us think. Former President George W. Bush said that he feels, quote, deep sadness over the Taliban's recent takeover of Afghanistan, which came nearly 20 years after he ordered the 2001 U.S.-led invasion that first drove the Taliban from power. Our hearts are heavy for both the Afghan people who have suffered so much and for the Americans and NATO allies who have sacrificed so much. That's legitimate. I mean, legitimate statement. I think he's sincere, and I think we all should probably feel the same. The people that have put in the work, the people that have lost people, the people that are harmed forever because of that, it's sad. I mean, it's sad to think 20 years, and what do we have to show for it? Oh, I don't know, people falling out of airplanes. Again, we have nothing to show for it, do we? So then the public is asked, and you've chimed in. It's pretty interesting. I think you've probably said the right things. So guess where the blame goes? 1,105 respondents, August 16, August 17, a poll. Respondents were asked to rank 9 entities in order of how responsible each were for the outcome of the war in Afghanistan. So you're given 9 options. I think it's interesting that guess what? He's not number one. He's not number one. I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know how, honestly, I'd make an argument that he should be number one. Not that he wanted it to go badly. I'm not saying that. But it was his call to go in. I mean, we went in with his direction. We went in with that pointer or whatever, and then Dick Cheney and the gang and all that stuff. So in order, it went this way. 55% rank the Taliban as most responsible. Number 2, 48% say Afghan leadership. Afghan military is third. George W. Bush is fourth. 34% of Americans say that when you're given the options, he is most responsible for the outcome of the war. Now, the outcome is different than going in general, but the outcome wouldn't matter had we not gone in. Then it goes U.S. military leadership, 31%. Joe Biden, 29%. Barack Obama, 21%. Donald Trump, number 8. He's going to love this. He's going to love the fact that he's on the list. He's at 22%. The U.S. military, number 9, at 20%. Then when people were asked the question about, well, when should we have gotten out? Look, I think Joe Biden, I thought most of Joe Biden's speech and his statements, other than the petty, overly defensive take on some things, I thought 75% of it was the right thing to say, and I think it's the right thing to do. I thought saying, I'm not going to give this to another president, although I guess it remains to be seen if Afghanistan is the problem of another president. Imagine if that's Trump again. Imagine that. But I agree with him. I mean, I think somebody had to make the tough call. What is shocking is, and I don't know the answer to this, and maybe over time we learn it was going to look like a mess no matter what. What is shocking is how it was executed. That's just weird to me. Again, I don't understand how it ended up so horribly. But I think he made the right, tough, difficult call that had to be made sooner or later. When was the right time? That was the question the public was asked. Well, when was the right time to get out? When? We're going to keep saying, well, next month or next year or 5 years from now. That's what Barack Obama did. We're going to get out. We're going to get out. No, we're not. Donald Trump, we're going to get out. We're going to get out. No, we're not. He finally did it. So when was the right time to get out? People were asked that question. Okay. And it was going to be ugly no matter what. So here you go. When should we have gotten out? 1,105 people asked. What year, I think what's missing from this is something big. What year do you think the United States should have exited Afghanistan? Notice what's missing. I mean, I would raise my hand. I lived through it. I was called unpatriotic. I would raise my hand and say, What year should we have exited? Can you ask us what year we should have not gone in at all? None? That's not on here. 16.1% wanted out in 2001. That's the year we went in. 2001. Trillions of dollars. Remember that. 29.5% thought we should have left the first term of George W. Bush. Yeah, that was never, you never even felt like that was on the radar. We weren't going to do less. We were going to do more. 12% say we should have left during George W. Bush's second term in office. 14% thought we should have left during the first term of President Barack Obama. Agreed. 4.5% said the U.S. should have left during the Obama second term in office. 4.6% thought we should have left during President Donald Trump's tenure in office. You know, why didn't he do it? Why didn't he give the speech that Joe Biden gave? Because he's ripping him now. You knew he'd do it. What is this? 1.8% thought we should have left during President Joe Biden's first year. What is that? 11% say we should have left Afghanistan sometime after 2021. What? I'm sorry, what's next year like compared to today? What? What's the difference? For that matter, to Joe Biden's point in his speech, and I'm not minimizing the exit and how ugly and screwed up it was, but what's the difference in this week and 2 years ago, or 10 or 12? What's the difference? And I think he was right. I think some of us, again, we may be the minority, but some of us would say, what if we wait 5 years? Because it would be easy. It would be easy because other presidents have done it because I think they realize what a nightmare it is. And they're getting comments from every direction for good reason. But it would be easy just to not have it public, don't do anything, leave it alone, make it somebody else's problem. That'd be the easier path. Just continue to do what everybody else has done and just make it the next president's problem. And he said, I'm not going to leave this for the next one. Now, it may be left for the next one. 21% of respondents said they don't know when the U.S. should have left Afghanistan. And that right there is probably the reason why it has not been talked about, discussed, debated, even on our radar for the past 19 and a half years. So at least we're thinking, at least for a couple more days.
From the Hot Pie Media Studios in Austin, Texas, it's the Jeff Ward Show. Listen at jeffwardshow.com.